Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello.
Coming at you from the Womack residence today. Womack Manor. Sounds nice, don't you think?
Sure.
So we're going to get into comparing and contrasting the principles of conservatism and liberalism. This is more about the political ideology as a whole. We'll get into what that means for you guys as potential voters later.
You want me to go?
Sure, go
All right.
for it.
What Americans value. Slide 1 of 2. All right. Ideologies help to organize how we think about politics. So we, in the last video, we talked about where you get your ideologies from. Mostly as you're being raised by your family, you kind of align your ideologies with them. And that kind of organizes how we think about politics, whether we lean conservative or whether we lean liberal. Okay. And we know that the two main American ideologies are liberal and conservative. And it says that slightly more Americans identify as conservative than they do as liberal.
So what's interesting to me about these two percentages is that if you look at the math, that's going to be what, like 61% total right there?
Yeah.
So that means that 39% do not identify with a political ideology. So we get this idea of like us being like sharply divided, but when it comes down to it, most of us, a plurality of Americans, don't actually identify one way or the other, and they just kind of are in the middle, while people on the both sides are yelling at each other, unfortunately. So this, I would definitely... Oh, Lewis is mad. All right, so some of these here you're going to see, again, there's stark contrast between liberals and conservatives on a few different issues. I don't know. Do you think that they should write it? Maybe write it if you don't know it.
Yeah, I mean, some of you are going to be, this is going to be very foreign to you. So you do need to understand the difference between the two ideologies. And there's a second slide of them too. This is just the first one.
There is a question on the quiz about it. So I mean, again, this is definitely pertinent to you, especially if you guys are trying to become more interested in political ideology in general. So, for example, military spending. Liberals believe we should spend less. Conservatives believe that we should maintain peace through strength, meaning that we should have a large military. For social policy, liberals are usually in favor of freedom of choice. Not in favor of abortion. It's like there's a very stark difference between being pro-choice and pro-abortion. But conservatives usually support the right to life. Prayer in schools, liberals are opposed. Conservatives are supportive. Again, you guys get the idea. Here is the second part of the chart. I would say the main thing between liberals and conservatives is the scope of government. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree.
So if you write down at least one, I would definitely get down the scope of government because in general, liberals are in favor of a larger government that is doing more for the people. Conservatives want more done in the private sector.
Yeah. Conservatives generally deregulate. They want less government regulations in most areas of life. And then liberals tend to want the government to step in more. To provide, help in certain areas. Right.
Well, and and a lot of conservatives think that that's at that point, like they shouldn't, that's not the government's job. So that's really all it is. It's not that conservatives don't care about others. It's just that they are more likely to think that the private sector should be doing that rather than the government. Anyway, I would write down at least a few of these to get an idea about the difference, but otherwise you guys are probably good to go.
All right, what Americans value, part 2. So we know that ideologies vary among different groups. Young people tend to be more liberal. African Americans tend to be more liberal. Women tend to be more liberal. Some people would refer to this, and this is a vocabulary term in your book, as the gender gap, right? Women tend to focus more on social issues and, they tap in more to their nurturing side when it comes to politics. And men tend to focus more on physical issues. The economy.
With women too, once they got the right to vote in 1920, that was actually you learned about the progressive era in U.S. history, and that's actually one of the main reasons why they got the right to vote is because they were trying to work against things like child labor laws and bad working conditions and things like spoiled meat and things like that were getting sold without any government regulation because they were worried about their families. So that's a much more important thing. The other thing about African Americans and minorities in general is that they have received a lot of their rights from the government. The government had to give
Right.
them their rights in the 1960s to actually like allow them to be fully participate in the American democracy.
Which
And
translates to big government.
correct. So like since they had to rely on the government, they usually will favor larger government in general nowadays as well.
What a good point.
Thank
that
you.
you just made.
Thank you.
And then financial status and religion also are very big players in how you see politics. Now, social class is less predictive than it used to be.
Meaning like you'll have a lot of wealthy people that'll still be liberal,
Right.
and then poor people that can still be conservative.
Correct. And then religious, say that for me.
Religiousity.
Religiousity is more important than religious denomination. So just being religious in general is going to have more of an effect on your political beliefs than your actual specific religious denomination.
Yeah, and it's more like how important is religion to you? Like, so
Right.
you can be like consider yourself a Catholic, but not actually practice very much. So religion's not going to be very important to you. So that might not affect your political ideology.
Right.
And then in generalization, most people who are religious, and this is tough because like one of the most liberal religious groups is Jewish people, and that part of the reason is because they have been persecuted throughout history. And but again, on the flip side of that, if you look at like Christian Protestants, they are like born again Christians, things like that. They are mostly conservative. So it really does depend on like your situation, and that's what, like, as Ms. Womack said, with social class, it's not as easy to identify as it once used to be, and religion is kind of the same boat. Jews and Catholics are super liberal, and otherwise a lot of Protestants are conservative.
But then I kind of think Catholics really push the like pro-life agenda, which would mean they're more conservative.
So, well, I think that's you're definitely right that they are more conservative now because of
Yes,
abortion.
I agree with you. It used to be
But
like
used to be
during
they-
JFK years, he was a Democratic Catholic, and
Right.
people really liked him.
Well, and the other thing is that Catholics didn't have like the same rights. Like when they were
Yes.
coming in as immigrants
They
in,
were more
in the early
persecuted.
1900s, they were persecuted
Right.
like Jews.
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry, we got too
Distracting. Sorry.
Sorry, it's fun to talk about.
Next.
All right, so we're going to get into assessing the influence of political ideology on political attitudes and behaviors. This. She's loving the camera, people. But this is kind of the shortest section, and there's a lot of
Just one slide.
Okay, cool. So the difference about this is that we have different types of voters. The first type is ideologues, and so what?
Ideologues.
Did I not?
That's right.
Okay, sorry.
It's fun to say.
Okay. So here's the thing. You guys are going to hear, like, especially on like the news and in politics, you're always going to hear about liberals and conservatives. And what we found, though, is that a low percentage, they did a study in 2000. It was only 20% of people actually are these ideologues, which means that they connect their opinions and beliefs with broad policy positions taken by parties and candidates. Meaning that for example, Donald Trump says that he wants to deregulate the economy or on businesses, that a conservative ideologue can say, I support that because I favor a lower scope of government or a smaller scope of government.
Right. A broad policy position.
Right. And so what we found is that only about 1/5 of American voters actually vote in that way. They actually connect what they believe, how they vote, to their ideology.
Is that high or low, do you think?
I think that it's a lot lower than politicians would want you to believe.
I agree.
So like you're going to hear all this stuff. The reason I say that about the media is because they always talk about it. And then they make you think that like huge amounts of people are always voting like that.
Right.
And that's not the case.
No.
The next type is group benefits, and these are they kind of think of politics mainly in terms of groups they like or dislike, meaning that Republicans support small business owners like me, or Democrats are the party of the working class, and so then that what you would think workers would usually vote Democratic, or small business owners would vote Republican. Do you think of what's another group?
I would tend to think like education, people in education. Democrats support educational policies, You know what I mean?
Sure.
And that's what I'm involved with, or that was the idea,
Right.
the example I'd come up with.
Yeah, I think that's a good one too. And
Yeah.
and teachers tend to be poorer, so like
Right.
that you usually
Less money.
Anyway, like so that a lot of teachers tend to be Democratic because of that.
Right.
The other type is the nature of the times, and they link the party in power with the country's fortune or misfortune.
Right.
And these are the kind of people that think about, how has my life been during this person's tenure as president or this person's tenure as a congressman or woman, and they won't necessarily really care about any sort of policies, but they know what their life's been like for the last couple of years,
Right.
and they'll vote accordingly. So if they have had a pretty bad life the last couple of years, they might vote for somebody different. But if things have been good, then they'll usually keep that person in power.
Right.
And then the last one is no issue content. They judge
Yep.
candidates on their personalities
Rather than what they're saying.
Right.
Or the content of what they're saying.
Or their beliefs in general.
Right.
They're going to say, oh, this person seems like a leader. Therefore, I'm going to be more likely to vote for them.
Mm-hmm.
And here, like the main thing you guys need to understand is that ideology really does have a lot of limited importance to the average citizen. Like we, as average, and I guess we don't really count as average citizens because we know a lot more.
I agree.
Than the average citizen.
We're a little bit better.
Must be nice. But like that's the thing, is that like it doesn't really affect people as much as others, meaning like politicians and the media, would want you to believe. And the ideology, like we saw it in the 2016 election, it was really, they did an exit poll,
Yeah.
which is very unreliable.
Yeah.
But they found that, I think that there was like 37% of conservatives had all voted for Donald Trump, like 37% identified as conservative, and then 80% of those voted for Trump, then 25 or something that were identified as liberal, then 85% voted for Hillary Clinton, and then
Yeah.
a bunch of people in the middle like voted for Hillary Clinton, more so than Donald Trump. And that's kind of what we see with the popular vote,
Yeah.
not getting, or the popular vote going to Hillary Clinton, but not the Electoral College. Anyway.
Okay, good talk. 6.6, identify the ways that people may participate in politics. All right, so we're going to cover a few different things here. Conventional participation, protest as a form of participation, and then class inequality and participation. Okay, so conventional participation, this is easy stuff, guys. Things that you probably think of right away. Things like voting, right? We go to the polls at least a couple times a year, or you have the opportunity to go to the polls at least a couple times a year to cast your vote. You also have the opportunity to run for office. We live in a country where anybody, as long as you qualify, depending on what office position you're running for.
Sure.
You can always run for office to get your voice heard and try to make changes. And then we also have the right to petition the government. So collecting signatures for certain types of petitions to try to change a policy or create a new policy. All forms of conventional participation. Unconventional participation then is going to go to things like protesting. And we've seen a lot of protesting the last 5 years or so, would you say?
Definitely.
As a form of political participation. Civil disobedience is going to be things like, we saw a lot of this during the civil rights movement, right? So African Americans that were sitting in on the lunch counters and refusing to get off of a bus if it's a whites only area of the bus. And then in some cases, we've also seen violence as a form of political participation.
Yeah, it really depends on the era. Like with Vietnam, it was really bad.
It was more during Vietnam, and we'll get into that in the next couple slides.
Oh, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Really quick, for civil disobedience, make sure you guys know that it's when the people, they are basically breaking a law intentionally because they believe the law is unjust.
Okay, so like Martin Luther King Jr. letter from Birmingham jail?
Exactly.
Okay.
And they say that an unjust law, people following an unjust law, okay, are just as much to blame as the people who made the law.
There you go.
Anyway.
Civil disobedience.
And the other thing, what do you think Americans, which one do they choose, conventional or unconventional?
I think it depends on the era.
Fair enough. The book says that more Americans participate in conventional, but I think that we've definitely seen some rising conventional participation. But the book also calls Americans couch potatoes when it comes to participation in American politics.
That is true. They really like are harsh with like how Americans are uneducated on politics and how we tend to not participate.
It's true. It's true, though.
It is true. Next.
So this is going over the political participation other than voting. Again, the most common way to participate is voting in elections, as Ms. Womack said. So you can see the red bar is 1967, black is 87, and then blue is 2014. So mostly you'll see like the in 1967, a lot more people were working with others on local problems, like local issues were more important. Whereas once we get into the like the contacting local government and persuading others, that was much more prominent in 87 and then 2014. But what's weird is that a much lower percentage is contributing money to a party or a candidate, which is interesting to me because I feel like that would have gone up.
Me too.
Especially after like Citizens United.
Me too.
So again, it really
persuading others how to vote.
Yeah, I don't know what does that look like.
I don't know.
I guess just maybe going on campaigns and stuff like that, or going around town ringing doorbells.
I guess nowadays would that count like as Facebook or like social media? You posting?
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah,
I like it.
Okay. All right, protest as participation. So obviously the biggest reason around protesting is going to be to draw attention to different issues. And especially nowadays, protests attract the media at very high rates. We see them more as rare, but again, I think in the last 5 years, we've actually seen a lot more protesting going on. The Women's March, there's always been like the pro-life march, the anti-gun violence marches. They've all been happening in the last just small group of years. At a higher rate, or at least that's how I think.
Well, and I feel like too, the media really publicizes
absolutely.
These, so you feel like they're happening at a much higher rate, but it's probably just maybe it's just the same, and then we just hear about it more.
Yeah, could be.
The other thing about with the media about drawing attention is that it's they actually, a lot of protests will set up specific places for the media to be.
Yes.
So like they are wanting this kind of the media attention. That's the point of a protest. Even people like just in the news today. The Westboro Baptist Church was protesting near. There was I think a Methodist church that wanted to start talking about how to like include LGBTQ plus people in their church, and Westboro Baptist came and among a group of other people, and they were protesting that meeting. So. Again, the Westboro Baptist people, they let the media know that they're going to be there so that they can, get that screen time.
Organizing these protests and these march is like a full-time business venture. Like there are people who that's what they do, is organize this stuff.
I think we're in the wrong profession.
Maybe. Okay, then moving again to civil disobedience. So we said before that this was very effective during the civil rights movement. This can be an effective form to at least get people's attention for what others are thinking, is bad things that are going on in the country or things that people aren't paying enough attention to. So again, Rosa Parks, making sure that she was arrested for, not getting out of the bus seat. That's going to bring a lot of attention, and that's going to hopefully eventually bring about change.
I wonder if there's like a modern example.
I know, I can't think of one.
I can't think of one either.
Like I kind of think of Colin Kaepernick. He's not breaking the law with what he's doing, but it is seen as civil disobedience. Sure. With him kneeling during the national anthem. I mean, a lot of Americans are very much against that.
Yeah. I can't think of one. There was one at a basketball game just recently. They were kneeling and protested something. I forget. That's probably the best example, but I don't know. We'll figure it out.
And then moving on to violence. So your book really talks about this during the protesting of the Vietnam War in the 1970s. And there was a protest at Kent State University, which is in
Ohio.
I knew that. I was drawing up
Forded in Ohio.
So at Kent State, these students were protesting, and it was like the National Guard that was brought in, and people ended up being shot and killed.
Yeah, it was a crazy situation. Like four students were shot. We don't really know exactly how it started, but there was basically, we think that there might have been like a rock thrown, and then a National Guard gun went off, and it just actually it started mass chaos.
Yeah.
There's a very famous picture of the woman like kneeling by the man. She actually didn't know the guy.
Yeah.
You know that?
But she was like really distraught in the picture. Very emotional.
Obviously, like, just saw somebody get
and
shot.
So this was like very who kind of shook the country when these pictures kind of came out of what was going on, just involving protests over a war.
Well, and you see the same sort of thing with Ferguson, about 7 years ago.
Yes.
I mean, that people were protesting police brutality or just police action in general, or even like the fact that African Americans were underrepresented on the Ferguson police force.
Right.
And the violence, though, was really, it was very bad, but like that's not what the intention was of the original protesters. Like the Black Lives Matter movement, they were more about civil disobedience. They wanted to be peaceful. They wanted to show their dislike of the law, of the policies, and then people from around St. Louis, they came in and they started looting, and they started that violence. So it's violence, I feel like, is more of a side effect of all of these things in general. Like and it happens really on the fringe of a lot of these places, and it's unfortunate, obviously, but it's something that we just have to be prepared to deal with, I guess, unfortunately.
Yeah, especially now.
I got my favorite one. Let's do it.
Good.
What you guys need to understand about participation is that the higher your socioeconomic status, the more likely you are to participate in politics. And the way that I kind of think about this is that if you're poorer or you're in poverty, you really don't have time to be informed. You don't have time to even go vote maybe on the voting day.
I don't think you even have as many resources to be informed.
Right.
You
might not have internet
access. You're at a disadvantage
access
in that area as well.
Right. And so that's the thing, is that we have, and these people are mostly, if you're impoverished, you're probably going to vote Democrat. You're probably going to be more liberal, because you want more things from the government. You want to get out of poverty. You think the government can help you with that.
Right.
And so on the flip side of that, if you're wealthy, you have a vested interest in keeping things the way they are. And you want to make sure that you're participating, that you're not only like voting, but also like contributing money.
Yeah.
You have that money to contribute.
Your wealth.
Right. So you're contributing money to these campaigns while also having the time to be more informed. You have the resources to be more informed. And so we have this inequality that you see in American politics is staggering.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that means.
Can they see that?
They can see that. It's okay.
Well, we've turned on
storage sense. What's interesting, though, is that minorities vote at nearly equal levels when all things are considered. Okay. So when, like, if you have an African American and a white man, okay, or let's say they're women this time, that have pretty much all the same position in life, they have relatively the same equality, same job occupation, they usually will vote at the same rates.
Correct.
But minorities actually will vote at a higher rate. And a lot of that is because they understand that the things they've been through, they need to keep voting. They have to
overcompensate because they want these things to continue.
Right. And so they've seen what good the government has done for them in the past, and they want to continue that sort of participation. So it's more like a social thing. Mm-hmm. Like they all kind of band together. They know that they have to participate. But again, we know that if you are at a lower socioeconomic status, you definitely don't participate, which is part of the reason why a lot of people think that America is mostly conservative, because there's a lot of people that are not participating at the lower levels.
Yeah, I mean, and going back to even just making the time out of your day to go vote. I was talking to my classes about people really push to get voting day on a holiday, where we should have the day off instead of Columbus Day. Let's put voting day on that day where we get the whole day off.
Yeah, I mean, that's
it would increase voter participation, or ideally it would.
Ideally, it would. I mean, and you could also make voting a requirement. That's another. I mean,
that's too much government intervention.
That is a lot of government intervention, but it would potentially be a solution to the problem.
Right.
Anyway, so the policy implications of lower political participation is that, guys, you understand that if you are not participating, politicians have no reason to look out for you. So when you are, as young people, when you aren't participating, when you don't go vote, when you don't contact your congressman or the president has no reason to look out for you and your interests. So that's part of the reason why the wealthy have so much like political clout. They have so much influence because they are participating at much higher levels than young people, than people in poverty. And so
it forces politicians to pay attention to them.
Correct. And so that's kind of what's so important, is that it's not necessarily the money part. It's the fact that we know that the wealthy are participating more.
They're the ones putting these politicians back into office every single time.
Correct. So if you guys, as a younger group of people, start to participate, you guys start to vote more, then the politicians have to pay attention to you. And so they could look at things. So, I mean, like free college, maybe. I mean, again, some of you are going to be against that, but like that's not the point. It's that even if you are against that, the politicians have to hear you, and they have to, act accordingly.
Yes. Agreed.
So I think that this one is going back to the conventional versus unconventional. So you see that it says Americans are more likely to have contacted politicians than citizens of most other democracies. So a lot of other democracies, they are less likely to just contact their
What's going on
politician.
in Canada up there?
I don't know. I guess they're
less people.
But they're
easier
really
to contact your
less people. I mean, yeah, but
there are less people in Canada.
Oh yeah.
So maybe they feel more heard.
Maybe.
I don't know. Just trying to make a generalization.
but I mean, it is more of a socialist democracy, so they probably have more participation in general.
Absolutely.
But I don't know. So this is a conventional approach. So you see more Americans will participate in a conventional method, and then the unconventional though are less likely. They are less likely to have participated in political protests, which is interesting because maybe you don't want to tell anybody.
Yeah.
So this is another fallacy of this. Even this chart is that if you've participated in a political protest, you might not want to tell people.
Yeah.
Or
so that this represents what a possible bias could be.
Correct. Or just a problem in general with polling. Like when you ask people about what they've done with their lives, they could always lie to you, or they could always just fudge the truth so that you're not getting a clear picture of what people are actually doing.
Yes.
Anyway,
be careful with
what's going on in
statistics.
Japan, nobody's protesting.
Well, maybe they are all happy with how things are going.
I guess. So the last part about this, guys, is we're going to analyze how public opinion about the scope of government guides political behavior.
All right, so we're understanding public opinion and political action, public attitudes toward the scope of government, democracy, public opinion, and political action. Okay, so should the government do more or less? In peacetime, most Americans say less. In your book, it says that the highest percentage of Americans said that government should do more. It was right after 9/11 happened. So usually you'll see, if we could look at a chart, we'll see Americans want government to do more during times of crisis, which makes total sense. And after crisis, usually the trust in government goes up as well, if you're polling Americans.
Correct.
So, however, public opinion is complex and can be very inconsistent. We as Americans are symbolically conservative. We believe in you have to work hard to get to where you are. You shouldn't need a ton of help to get, to be successful. It should be on your own, and the government shouldn't necessarily have to help you. However, operationally, we tend to lean more liberal as an entire country. We oppose the idea of big government in principle, but we favor it in practice. And sometimes look at the civil rights movement. The government had to intervene. The government had to step in and say, we have to pass this Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act in 1964 and 5 because states weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing, and they continued to discriminate. So
I think the main thing is you think about symbolic conservatives, we value the past, we value where we've been, but at the same time, we want to make sure that that people are provided for. We have the book says that we're mostly conservative, but we have the biggest liberal program in Social Security our Social Security program is bigger than most other countries, most other democracies. So at the same time, we talk a big game about being symbolically conservative, but a lot of people at the end of the day want more this liberal idea of helping other people. And even what's weird to me is that both Democrats and Republicans have really shifted more to the left.
Yeah.
And so even Republicans, people think they say that they're conservative, but Republicans, they can't get rid of Social Security.
Yeah, and I mean, we have so many socialism aspects of society anyway. I mean, police departments, fire departments, public education. Those are all very liberal. Those are socialist programs, which would be meaning that we're more liberal, but we would like to say that we're more conservative.
Guys, I'm gonna drop a bomb on you right now. You ready? America is a socialist democracy. It already is. You can't stop it. It's already there. Okay, so I'm sorry, Republicans, if you're upset. You can write me a bad review on...
I tell my kids this all the time, so they're not hearing anything new.
Well, all right. Well, fair enough. You want to finish it up there?
Sure. So this kind of brings us to a policy gridlock. So what this means is that both conservative politicians and liberal politicians can claim that the majority of the American public is on their side. So when they're running for office, let's say, they can say, well, the majority of Americans agree with me. You know, more people want to be conservative or more people want to be liberal. And so they both can kind of claim that. And that kind of leads us to a policy gridlock because Congress, you know, they think they know what the majority of the public wants, but really they don't.
Right. Well, and I think at the end of the day, well, it's not that most people are with them. It's that most people are in the middle.
Correct.
And so what politicians have to do is they have to tailor their message specifically to the moderates, and they are trying to get more moderates on their side so that they can say, hey, I do have a majority.
That's exactly right.
Like a lot of people now I think that there's a poll I saw in an article that said 70% of Americans are in favor of health care for all. And it's like, okay, first of all, that poll, you just probably polled 2,000 people, and then you just said that. But again, that's the thing is there are so many inaccuracies and inadequacies when it comes to polling that we really don't know what the actual political attitude is of American citizens.
Agreed. Okay,
chapter 6. We didn't solve anything, but
no,
it's okay, guys. We have one more.
No.
It's okay. So the main thing about what you guys need to understand about public opinion and democracy is that we as citizens, we don't choose or we don't tell the government what to do. We are choosing people who are going to make those decisions, though. And so the thing about that is that is the public really fit to choose its leaders? And based on our book would definitely probably say no.
Yeah.
The founding fathers would probably say no as well.
Right.
And so that's kind of why we have things like the Electoral College, like why senators weren't chosen by the people until 1917. So that's the kind of the thing that we deal with is like we want people to participate more, but at the same time we want them to participate and be informed.
We want them to be informed.
Yeah, and so if you're not informed, you can stay home.
Yeah, kind of.
Kind of?
Yeah.
Is that bad to say?
I don't know.
I mean,
I just want people to be informed.
I mean, again, I don't care what your opinion is, but as long as you can back it up, that's what's really important is that if you have a real legitimate reason to believe that, and you have done your research, you know what you're doing, that's what's most important. But so we don't really know. Anyway.
Now are we done?
Now we're done.
Now we're done.
Guys, it's been great. Catch you in the next one.